Welcome back. Thank you very much. That was the news brought to you by Shegufumi Oyedokun. We're on to our interview segment. On Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, declared an outbreak of Lassa fever in the country. The agency has also confirmed that there have been about 60 deaths attributed to the disease as of January 13, 2019. And of course, we'll remember that on the 19th of January 2019, of course, this year, there was the news about a soldier who had died from Lassa fever infection in Jos. These and several other issues have sparked, in some quarters, agitations, in some quarters, calm as to whether or not the government is up on its game towards ensuring that Lassa fever does not indeed take up the whole nation, does not cause more harm than can be handled by the country. And today on the program, we'll be looking at the re-emergence of Lassa fever in the country. And I am being joined by Dr. Adeleye Babarinsa. He is a medical expert. But we'll take a quick break, after which the program will continue. To stay with us. Welcome back. Just a piece of information on what the virus is and some bit of information as to preventions, but we'll be doing much more of that in the course of the program. We remember in 2018 there was such an outbreak in the country, and the disease spread to about 18 of the country's states. It was the largest outbreak of Lassa fever recorded. There were about 3,498 suspected cases, which were reported from 23 states of the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. And of these, 633 were confirmed positive, 20 probable, and 2,853 negatives. Now, I told you earlier that I am not going to be doing the talking alone. I'm being joined by Dr. Adeleye Babarinsa. Again, thank you very much for always coming on the program.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, earlier in the year, January 16 and 17, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control organized the maiden edition of the Lassa Fever International Conference in Nigeria. And of course, did say it was in the bid to make more awareness on the disease and Ghana supports, Ghana knowledge towards eradicating, if possible, and stopping the surge. Let me ask you, 50 years ago, it was first discovered, Lassa fever was first discovered in Borno State.
Yes.
50 years after, we're still struggling to deal with it entirely. What would you make of the progress the nation has made so far in 50 years?
Well, the beauty of Nigeria is that on paper, we have so many things that have been done. I mean, on paper, we have strategies. On paper, we have health centers across the country. On paper, every hospital is supposed to have emergency plan for fever. But the truth is that in reality, many of these things don't exist. And I think the major challenge is not just having conferences and developing strategy, it's transferring these strategies into actions. Because the truth is that if truly these strategies are working, then why will Nigeria have the largest outbreak in the history of Lassa fever last year, with about over 400 deaths and over 400 confirmed cases and over 100 deaths, and even about a lot of health professionals were affected. I think at least 6 or so died. You know? So, I mean, that tells you that there's a lot of problem with the implementation. And just last year, what we were recovering from last year is that setting this year again, 60 confirmed cases, about 20 deaths already. I mean, it tells you that, I mean, it's something we should be concerned about, especially if we are concerned about just one life. That's someone's brother, that's someone's sister, that's someone's father or mother. So I think we need to translate what we're doing in conferences into reality.
Thank you. Now, the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, that's Dr. Chikwe Iekweazu, said that, well, understandably, there has been 60 confirmed cases across 8 states of the country, but it's not a reason for Nigerians to panic. Would you agree with him?
I wouldn't agree with that, but you see, panic doesn't solve a problem. For example, a car is burning, everybody is raising up their heads, shouting. It won't stop that car from burning. So panic is not what's going to solve the problem. What will solve the problem is if we take practical steps. Because the truth is, last year, according to WHO, it spread across 21 states. Some sources quote 23 states. And that means that almost every state is at risk. In many other countries in West Africa where there is a problem, it's localized to a few regions. So that means that in those countries, probably they were able to contain it. But I don't know, probably because we're not doing enough, it keeps. So if we have 8 states as at the 3rd week of January, and LASSA usually extends towards April, then you can imagine the possibilities that can happen if nothing is done by April. And we don't want it to get to your state because, I mean, when it happens, it means everybody, any state, I'm sorry I used that word. It means when you're going into the bus, you're going anywhere, you're scared. I mean, someone coughs, you're scared. I mean, I'm sure many people don't want to die now. And we don't want to live in fear. I mean, you can remember what happened during the Ebola crisis. People could not even shake. It was that bad. So I think we should not be, we should not panic, but we should also not go and rest.
Which is why I'll ask you, you make mention of the Ebola case we had, and every nation of the world, not just Nigeria, acknowledged the efforts Nigeria put towards ensuring that the disease did not spread, and we're able to contain, even we actually got acknowledgement from the WHO. And we realized how people took proactive measure. Everyone became unnecessarily clean, if I could use that word. They took preventive measures. Now, while we say the government needs to convert the conferences to proactive actions, take necessary steps, improve on this and that, what about Nigerians? I mean, we understand it's just in states like Taraba, Plateau, Ebonyi, Ondo. Of course, that's the closest state to Oyo, and Edo State and the rest of them. How about the people? What would you say about the commitment of the general public towards preventing the spread of the virus like we did? I mean, if you were to compare what we did during Ebola outbreak and what we do with Lassa fever.
I think people, one of the challenges we have in this country is that we still have a high literacy level in this country. So many times it may even be hard to communicate to people. But even for those of us that are literate, it's important that we understand that education is not just information. Education is when you apply the things that you learned. And let me go back to the issue of Ebola. What were the things we did? One of the things we did is we were educated on the importance of hand washing. Regularly. So you see many parastatals have a place where people can wash their hands and dry their hands to prevent transmission of disease. And people were advised on being careful with contacts. And many times people took it to the extreme. When you also go to hospitals and all that, people, instead of using the contact thermometers, they use the infrared thermometers and all these things. You realize that many of these things are just basic things that is done anywhere in the world in the 21st century. In fact, today you have taps where you don't need to touch the tap before the water comes to your hands. You have waste bins, you just put your waste on top, it opens and closes automatically to reduce contact. These are not special things that you do because there's a disease. These are normal, basic hygienic practices that will contain infection anywhere. And it's good Nigerians understand this. If not, we'll keep engaging via brigade approach. Every time there's a problem, we do the right thing. When it looks like the problem dies down, we go back. Then there's a problem again, and we now have this circle instead of ending the problem permanently. So I think it's a challenge to all of us to know that the basic key to prevent many infectious diseases, not just Ebola, even typhoid, malaria, many infectious diseases, is by ensuring basic hygiene. And when we know this is a problem, we will not wait until there is LASSA before we do the right thing. So please, Nigerians, let's educate ourselves in every way possible. Everywhere I go to, I used to sing the Yoruba song, Imototo, when I go to Yoruba communities, you know, and I encourage people in other languages. Let's tell ourselves it's the basic principle for healthy living.
Thank you very much. Now talk about educating the people. Let's talk about Lassa fever.
Yeah.
Well, the much people, an average Nigerian knows that it's contacted through contact with feces or excretes of rats.
Yes.
Is that all there is to knowing about Lassa fever? What exactly does a fever and the virus entail? Well,
Lassa fever is a virus that is deadly when contacted. And it's transmitted, just as you said, by several things. The first on the list is when this rodent, multi-mammate rodent, which is very common in West Africa and Equatorial Africa. You see, whenever this rodent passes its feces or its urine on our food products or on materials that we get in contact with, you know, that is one of the major ways by which it transmits this. And many of us, I mean, some of us, people that live in local, and we have to be careful, especially people that buy some of these things outside. You understand? Another way in which it can be transmitted is when a person contacts the disease, the person can actually contact it, transmit it to another person through the body fluids. I mean, it could be sweat, I mean, it could be the person's urine, the person's excreta. And it's been said that, you see, Lassa, the virus can stay in the urine for, I mean, weeks, 3 to 9 weeks. So it tells you how long this thing can spread. It can even be spread through the respiratory tract, I mean, from coughing and all that, when it gets into a person's body. And another way it could also be transmitted easily is in the hospital settings. I mean, because it can stay in this body fluids for some time. So when you have a lot of patients that come to the hospital because of one sickness or the other, some of them could be this virus, and the hospitals or the clinics are not well equipped or not well prepared. They can easily transmit it from one patient to another, especially when they share material, which of course, these are basic things that should not be done. And I want to believe that our hospitals are obeying those strict laws of universal precaution.
Thank you. Now, you rightly established that contact with excretes or excrement from the multi-mammate rat, also known as African rat, which is quite very common in Equatorial Africa.
Yes. In fact, some people eat it.
People eat it.
I mean, that's how funny it is.
No, you know, I'm trying to see or ask if there is a correlation with the fact that Lassa fever is quite common and spreads more in West African, Equatorial African nations, of which Nigeria is a part of. And you rightly say some even go on to eat this rat. Does the fact that there's been a consistent spread of this virus in this region has anything to do with the economic status of the region?
That obviously. And it's very important that we note that because Africa is one country that is in poverty, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where West Africa falls under. And you ask yourself a question: what are the people that are most guilty of not living in an hygienic environment? Obviously, it's the poor. What are the people that are more exposed, I mean, to these kinds of rats? Obviously, there are people that live in places, slums and ghettos, where you have a lot of waste around and you have death around. In fact, as I said, some of these people even go as far as killing these rats to eat them. And of course, that even shows that the rats are now their friends and that there's increased chance of contact. But that does not imply that people that have better economic status cannot have it. Because these people one day will find, aside from the fact that you have poor people living everywhere, even in the urban settings, and even say, oh, I'm very rich, or I'm in the middle class, I'm exempted. No, it doesn't respect people. But the truth is that it's more common. And the question you also ask yourself is that what are the people that also fail to present to the hospital on time? And probably don't even have a hospital because of, I mean, healthcare in Nigeria is in Africa, it's unaffordable and probably inaccessible in some places. I mean, I went to a village recently, it's called Adeleye village. Whenever it's raining, they don't even have access, and there's no health center there. And there are many places like that. And that's where a lot of deaths from Lassa fever are even not recorded. Don't forget that actually Lassa kills about 5,000 people every year. So many of these deaths are not even recorded because a lot of them don't even get to the hospital. In fact, it's estimated that Lassa affects about 400,000 people every year.
So basically, just as the conference was supposed to, the difference the conference was supposed to make, bridging the gap in knowledge, and of course improving on research. It isn't just about those, but about, like you rightly say, providing accessible and affordable healthcare services to just about everyone, those who are especially more susceptible to contacting the virus, which is one of the calls Nigerians, and indeed we on Frontline are making to stakeholders, and not just the government, stakeholders and relevant bodies, towards ensuring that no one is denied accessible and affordable healthcare services. What we're still looking at Lassa fever, the emergence in the country. Now, how does the virus work in the body? I mean, the Lassa virus. How does it work? And what? Because it's been said that it doesn't usually put up some early symptoms. And even if it does, the symptoms are usually quite familiar to malaria.
Very correct, absolutely.
So how does a virus work? And what do you do if you begin to feel particular signs?
You see, the problem many times is that if we wait for the sign, I mean, it might be misleading. Let me tell you why. Out of everybody, 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, only 2 in 10 people that are infected with Lassa fever actually come up with the symptom. So that means that someone may be infected around you, and the person has no sign, and that person might be transmitting it to someone else. In fact, the person, because we all have different strengths of our immune system, the person may have a stronger immune system than you do, and may be transmitting it, meanwhile he doesn't have the symptom. So it's even in only 1 in 5 cases that we see those symptoms. And the problem is that even when those symptoms present, they present in the early stages like any viral illness or febrile illness like malaria, like typhoid, and many other common illnesses. So most times you don't suspect it, you know, and it's only in the advanced stages that you will likely be very, very sure that this most likely may be Lassa. When you start presenting with things like bleeding from the nose and bleeding from the mouth, and bleeding from the anus, and several other kinds of severe signs, and you've been treating this fever and it's not going, at that stage, most likely that patient has transmitted it to several other people. So that's what they said. That's what we advise as health professionals, to have high index of suspicion, and we encourage people generally, when you are sick, it's better you go to the hospital, so that preferably investigations will be made before you are treated. So that when they are doing the test and it's not malaria, it's not typhoid, it's not other common disease, an earlier suspicion of a possibility of Lassa is made. So that immediately treatment is commenced and there is no improvement, you can quickly. But unfortunately, most people don't do that. Most of us treat our malaria. You just feel fever, this is malaria, and you go and take normal drugs, over the counter, and so that's part of the challenge we have in curtailing this disease in our environment.
Now you talk about signs such as bleeding from the openings,
nostrils, from the orifices, from the mouth.
That's why they say it's hemorrhagic.
Yes, that's why it's an hemorrhagic fever.
But those are signs that you see at an advanced.
Exactly.
So it means that should anyone come up with some seeming fever signs or symptoms, the best thing to do is see a doctor. As soon as possible.
Although we must be honest, in this environment, many of our clinics are not easily affordable and accessible. And in fact, the ones that should be affordable, I mean, the government clinics are practically non-operational. And that's why we need a government, we need the government to do what they should do to improve these basic things. Healthcare should be accessible to every citizen. That's what obtains over the world. So I think it's something we need to hope. Thank God that we have an opportunity to decide, and I just hope that every Nigerian decide right.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Now talk about, of course, getting accessible and affordable healthcare services. Let's talk about laboratories that are sufficiently equipped to test the virus should people come up with symptoms. Now, there are just about 4 laboratories in the country. I listened to the chairman of the National Lassa Fever Steering Committee, Tomori, who was saying that the government had depended so much on external funding for those labs. But as of today, there are just about 4, which is why I'll ask you, 4 labs sufficiently equipped to test Lassa fever. What's the hope of the people, especially with the fact that many of these labs may not be sufficiently equipped, duly equipped to deal with these cases? And 4 for over 198 million people, How do we juxtapose this?
Well, 4 labs, it's quite few because even basically, if possible, every state should have their own, because it means that if someone is infected in a particular state, you have to travel, send the sample as far as, but we have to thank God, we're moving forward. Because before 2018, we had 2 labs. We had basically rural specialist hospital lab in Edo State and Lagos State University Hospital, their lab in Lagos. Last year, there was an additional one, Abuja, a National Reference Laboratory, Abuja, and now we have 4. So we are moving in a positive direction. But we have to be honest with the fact that those tests are highly specialized tests, and it costs a lot of money, not just to build this lab, but to also maintain it. So we may not be able to have many labs in a short time, but we can make the best of the ones we have right now, and we can also invest more resources into preventing this disease, so that, prevention is cheaper than cure. But while we just have 4 now, but that's grossly inadequate, and I want to believe that the government is trying to invest more resources to at least every zone of the country. We have 6 geopolitical zones. You boast of 1 at least. And I think from there, we can now start moving towards every state having a lab.
Thank you very much. The conversation is still on the re-emergence of LASSA fever in Nigeria. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control is said that as of January 13, 2019, there has been some 60 cases, confirmed cases of LASSA fever in the country. But the agency has said there isn't any need at all to panic. And my guest, Dr. Adeleye Babarinsa, has also given sufficient information as to preventing, because basically prevention, they say, is better and less costly than cure. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll look at more talks on LASSA fever. Do stay with us. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has declared an outbreak of LASSA hemorrhagic fever, LASSA fever, in 8 states. The federal government has since said it is working hard to prevent the recurrence of LASSA fever in the country. The Minister of State for Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, said this at the maiden LASSA Fever International Conference in Abuja with the theme, 50 Years of LASSA Fever, Rising to the Challenge.
We have developed a LASSA Fever research plan that is aligned with the global research agenda. We shall invest more in training staff, in acquiring necessary equipment, in developing best protocols, and embracing best practices that help us to achieve results. I hope all global efforts come to fruition in the near future so that we have more tools at our disposal for swift prevention, detection, and response to such disease outbreaks.
Also speaking at the event, the Chief Executive Officer and the National Coordinator of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Chikwe Iyekweazum, said the conference marked 50 years of the discovery of LASSA fever in Nigeria, adding that it is aimed at knowledge sharing and combining efforts at eradicating the disease.
Every life lost to LASSA fever in Nigeria is a huge loss to the country. This is why we're gathered here to talk about vaccine development, improved diagnostics and therapeutics, as well as social science strategies. We're here to learn and relearn. We're here to ensure that going forward, Nigeria and the global community will rise to the challenge that LASSA fever presents. We are no longer just willing to be recipients of knowledge, but active participants in our own destiny. We have realized that we cannot afford to wait any longer in Nigeria. 50 years after the LASSA virus was first discovered in our country, we're marking this by rising to the challenge, recognizing it's better late than never.
Chairman, National LASSA Fever Steering Committee in Nigeria, Oyewole Tomori, also said he was optimistic that soon the vaccine for LASSA fever would be developed in Nigeria. He added that the country also had to rise to the challenge of funding the few laboratories in the country rather than depending on external funding.
Whatever laboratory we have now, a lot of it is being funded by external sources. Nigeria has to move away from that and fund our laboratories. But let me also say, in times gone by, in the 80s and 90s, we had good laboratories in this country that governments were funding. But somehow, over the years, we've abandoned all that, and we're depending solely on external sources. That is wrong. We must change our attitude. And I think we have more than enough funds in this country to take care of our laboratories.
Meanwhile, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has activated an emergency operations centers to coordinate its response against the outbreak, and has advised members of the public to focus on prevention by practicing good personal hygiene and proper environmental sanitation. Olajumoke Babalola reporting for New Frontiers Television. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's still Frontline, and we're still looking at the re-emergence of Lassa fever in the country. And my guest is still Dr. Adeleye Babarinsa. There you watched the package, and there were excerpts from the first international conference on Lassa fever in the country, held from January 16 to 17 in Abuja. And of course, the Minister of State for Health, Sosage Inare, and the Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Dr. Iyekweazu, and of course the Chairman, the National Steering Committee on Lassa fever, Tomori, speaking on what needs to be done to prevent and of course expunge the virus, if possible, from the country. And while the government does the needful, Nigerians have also been asked to, the least you can do is maintain some good hygiene. But let me ask you, sir, there presently is no vaccine against the virus causing Lassa fever.
Yes.
How then, what proactive measures can we take to prevent? I mean, you've talked about proper hygiene, good hygiene, cleanliness, and the rest of it. What more do we do? Because I could be clean, I step out, and then, well, God forbid, I come in contact with somebody who already has it.
Yes.
What do you do, basically?
Yeah. First is, just as I explained earlier, we should make sure that we do everything to keep rodents away from our houses. Some people do as much as getting cats, because cats and rodents are not friendly. So when you see some cats around some houses, that may be the reason, actually. Some people, of course, keeping the environment clean. And thank God some communities follow environmental sanitation and all that. But if people understand why they're doing it, it's also good our foods are placed in containers that are well sealed. I mean, from rodents and all that. Then it's also important that, just as I said, we mentioned about hospitals ensuring that they follow precautions. But one of the things that we must put in place, we must do, is that we must discover that vaccine. I believe that if Lassa was an American problem, they would have discovered it. It means probably we're not investing lots more money into research. We can't expect America to solve our own problems. So I think these are things that we must look into. Very importantly.
Thank you very much. I discovered there is a group of researchers in the US already. Yes. I mean, I guess it's some military researchers who are working out to come up with a vaccine. Yes. Hopefully that's scales through, and well, it becomes affordable, because
but they can't be as committed as as we will be,
Africans,
we are the ones that are affected.
Absolutely.
So we should not just relax and expect US to always solve all our problems. I think that's a mindset we need to change as earlier, but we should encourage them to keep the good work.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about healthcare providers. I mean, there are persons who are the first responders, usually the first responders to persons who have begun to show early signs, or maybe signs at the latter stage of the virus. What's the hope of those people? You said rightly last year about 6 or more of them died, providing care to those people. What's the hope of those people, especially as they discharge their duties?
I think it's a major challenge, because the truth is that most of our facilities, especially government facilities, are not well equipped to prevent this sickness, and that's why we have a big problem, especially among our young health workers. If you're aware, about 90% of young professionals want to leave the country, and of course every year, I mean, we have thousands of professionals leaving the country to the UK, to the US, to Saudi Arabia, to Australia, to South Africa, and it's pathetic, because if you're not careful, we'll get to a point where we don't have enough, and it's terrible because we even have few. I mean, WHO recommends about 1 to 600. Nigeria has about 1 to 4,000, 1 to 5,000. It's a very, very serious issue. So what I'm trying to say, in other words, is that the government must ensure that enough facilities are there, enough facilities are there to protect our workers. But we also cannot avoid it. in certain cases, usually it's almost inevitable that 1 or 2 health workers will die. The question is, when this happens, how do we honor these people who sacrifice their life protecting people? Because if not, what will happen is that health workers will have to be stigmatizing people that are at risk. I mean, people are sacrificing their life, they sacrifice their families, who they will get in contact with. Do we honor these people? You know, these are questions we need to ask ourselves so that we can improve the morale of health workers towards combating this. If not, we'll just sit in conferences, but at the field, nobody's working because everybody is trying to protect his or her life.
Thank you very much. Talk about the rate at which Nigerian doctors are leaving the country.
Yes.
Medical doctors, resident doctors already protesting in Louth as to the fact that doctors are leaving and the government is not making provisions to replace those that are leaving. But of course, we understand the reasons many of those people are leaving. Let's talk about treatments for Lassa fever. Yeah. I mean, we talked earlier about the Re-emergence.
Yes. Antiviral. Yes. I mean, first is the Lassa fever treatment is majorly supportive because many times if a person can survive the illness for 24 days, the person will likely recover. So most of the time, just like a viral illness like common cold. So most of the time it's majorly supportive. You try to rehydrate the patient is losing fluid from diarrhea and all that. You give the person blood, this person is anemic. You do all kinds of supportive treatment. Then we give ribavirin, especially if you catch the patient in the early stages. But what the ribavirin actually does is just to reduce the rate of multiplication of the virus. It doesn't really cure the virus in cough, you know, and we just hope that the person survives.
Thank you. Is that free? Is it ribavirin?
Yes, it's free.
Okay.
It's free and it's available. You know, but it's just that it has to be in major centers like teaching hospitals, you know, which we have in all the states of the Federation.
Thank you. Finally, Lassa virus is one of the several viruses identified by the WHO as a likely cause for future epidemic. And of course, we're experiencing that in some African nations already. They therefore list it for urgent research and development to develop new diagnostic tests, vaccines and medicines. Let me ask what role Nigeria stands to play, especially in research and of course providing every necessary measures.
Nigeria has a major role because number one, this illness started in Nigeria, in Lassa town in Borno State. We can't detach ourselves from this. Aside from that, Nigeria has the highest outbreak and most people dying from it. And we must also know that Nigeria is one country that is blessed with human resources. All over the world, Nigerians are making waves, you know, in the scientific world. So Nigeria needs to be at the forefront of getting the cure to this illness. And don't forget the fact that, I mean, Nigeria has one of the worst cases of maternal and child mortality all over the world. And I mean, Lassa is deadly for women. Once a pregnant woman has Lassa, I mean, 4 in 5 die. And when it happens to the newborn, that's even worse. It's almost 9 in 10. So what I'm trying to say in other words is that Nigeria needs to be at the forefront. We can't afford to sit down and expect everyone in the world to solve our own problem. And I know if we can do that, we might be able to change the story of Lassa over time.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Adeleye Babarinsa. So much on Lassa fever, but more importantly is the call for prevention, rather than making moves for cure, for treatment. And it's the responsibility of Nigerians to first do the needful towards ensuring that we prevent the virus. And some of the very easy things you do is protect your food, like you say, keep it in sealed containers, and as much as you can clean your environment, maintain healthy lifestyle, basically. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has said that there is no need to panic. We said that earlier, but they've also called for focus on practices of good hygiene, avoid bush burning, ensure that you maintain a healthy lifestyle. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you so much for watching Frontline today. Until next time when we meet, do enjoy the rest of your day and indeed weekend. I am Olajumoke Babalola.